What's up, guys? Before I start this next video, if you're subscribed to my channel, I'd like to ask you to make sure that you're getting all my notifications, meaning that you're getting notified through YouTube every single time I put out a new video. I realized the other day that when you subscribe to somebody, the default setting is that you'll receive some notifications. If you're a fan of my content and you don't want to miss a notification every time I put out a new video, please make sure in your settings that you have the default setting changed to all notifications versus only some of them. So here in Miami Beach, there is a rooftop bar called Gitanos that does a gay night on Sunday nights, an LGBT night, whatever you want to call it. This started during the pandemic, during COVID. Once things started to open back up, they wanted to take advantage of that, and they wanted to take advantage of the fact that where the gay bars are, which is in South Beach, the very touristy sort of part of Miami Beach, that part was still under stricter lockdown when things were starting to open back up with COVID. Because again, being tourist central, I guess it was a higher risk spot in terms of spreading infection, right? So anyway, this rooftop bar, Gitanos, was like, oh, we should do a gay night to have a place for gay people to go out, aka spend money on drinks, while the gay bars are like so limited with the hours that they're open and they're not really fully open yet. So again, just keep in mind, this is when things are just starting to open back up, right? So naturally, there became kind of a word of mouth hype about this place called Gitanos on Sunday nights. And I remember going, I guess this was 2020, maybe 2021. I want to say 2021. So at the time of this video, 2 years ago, and it was popping, like in every way, right? It's a rooftop, so it's a chill environment. The sun is setting. I remember people would show up around sunset, eat a little bit, and then drink, and then it would fill up and get super, super busy. And the guys were interesting guys, right? Because it's a Sunday night. So, and it's also not in like the trashier part of Miami Beach. It's where Miami Beach starts to get kind of more polished. So the crowd it would attract was more, I guess, sophisticated, we could say. But also, again, it being Sunday night, and earlier, like Sunday evening around sunset, it's a certain kind of crowd, right? It's not the 2 a.m. dive bar crowd. A lot of them are professionals that still need to work the next day, Monday morning. So I was thriving. Like, I loved going to Gitanos. There was a point where I was going almost every Sunday. And then, you can't consistently go out every Sunday night when you have work on Monday. And then, everything else started opening up anyway. So the novelty factor of Gitanos sort of faded away, I guess. A few weeks ago, it was President's Day, the Monday after. So I was like, oh, I should go to Gitanos. It's been a while, right? And I figured because the next day's a holiday, it will be a busy Sunday night. And like the last few times that I had been to Gitanos, it was kind of dead. And I was shocked. I mean, there were still primarily gay men, a more sort of interesting crowd, again, and more diverse and eclectic mix than what you see at a trashy gay dive bar at 2 a.m. But it was kind of lame in terms of there being no more than, I want to say 20, maybe 25 people on this whole vast rooftop. And I was sitting there sort of reminiscing about those early fun nights at this rooftop, how I met interesting guys. I went on a few dates with guys I met from that rooftop, again, 2 years back. And it was this bittersweet feeling of like, it's kind of neat when you experience something that you don't know in the moment when you're experiencing it, that it might never happen again. And we sort of take things for granted and don't know what we have until it's gone, right? And that reminded me of back in my early 20s, dating apps had already started to exist, but they weren't as pervasive as I think as I know that they are now. I feel like back then there was still an element of taboo-ness where people were like, dating apps? Like, I'm not gonna use dating apps. I feel like now it's like the normal way to meet somebody, to hop on an app, even for straight people. And I remember just having such fun experiences in my early 20s, meeting such interesting men at the bars, the gay bars, particularly in the East Village in New York City. And I remember this one specific bar called Eastern Bloc, which I talked about before on this channel. I'm sure some of you guys remember that bar. It was the same kind of feeling when I found out they closed, of like, wow, a moment in time that will never happen again. Like a certain generation and group of gay men who lived in New York City during that era know about Eastern Bloc, know about sort of the legend of Eastern Bloc, the decor that it had, which was this communist Eastern Bloc, hence Eastern Bloc, decor and aesthetic with the red dim lights and this sort of like Soviet, like USSR propaganda. It was just such an interesting, neat, niche vibe and community that it attracted. That bar has since closed, but I remember before they closed, I would go back here and there my last few years in New York City, and it just wasn't the same. It just wasn't able to pull in as big of a crowd. And I remember at a certain point they started charging people at the door, which is kind of a weird thing for a gay bar to do. It's pretty unusual, especially for a dive bar, but clearly they were doing that because they must have been struggling financially. But of course, if you start charging people and there's, cover charge to get in, then you're also long-term, that's a short-term solution, not such a great long-term business solution, because then once people know, they're not going to want to go there. They're going to go to the bar where that cover charge can get them an extra drink or two, right? So that bar doesn't exist anymore, but it's the same idea of like these experiences that are a moment in time. And I hear people talk about that with Miami in general, that in the 90s and the early 2000s, it was a crazy scene here in terms of partying. And I mean, that sounds very superficial, and it is superficial, but I'm saying even like on a community level, there was a big gay presence to Miami Beach that just doesn't exist the way that it used to. Apparently there were, gay establishments everywhere, gay bars. Now that is more like Fort Lauderdale. There's this neighborhood called Wilton Manors in Fort Lauderdale, which is about 30 to 40 minutes north of here. But all of this has kind of gotten me to think about, like, is it just that I have gotten older, and it's kind of like dating or sex, right? The first few times it's so new that it's so much more exciting, and then maybe you just need more to get stimulated, and you grow and you change and you get, the same things don't stimulate you. So I don't know if it's that with the gay bars, that I'm not drawn to them anymore. And Gitano's, this rooftop bar that I mentioned, is really the extent of like what I have been willing to do here and there to go there and see what kind of crowd that pulls out. Or is it just that we're nearing the death of the gay bar? Bars will always exist for sure, but I think gay bars in particular, again, I don't know if it's me becoming older, but I have other friends, and I remember somebody commenting on my channel about this once, that it just seems like it's gotten more and more trashy. People being belligerent, but also like very just tacky, the kind of people who show up to these bars late at night. And I wonder if because of our app culture, people who don't want to be in that environment, and people who are more serious, whatever that means, more professional, more polished, like, they don't want to be in that kind of environment. And maybe in the 90s, they would have had no choice but to go to a gay bar, to be fully around gay people, feeling safe, knowing that everybody's gay. And maybe that attracted a more sort of mixed, diverse crowd. But today, guys who have the privilege of not needing to go to a gay bar to meet gay guys, so for example, using apps, I wonder if that's actually making these bar environments ironically more and more homogenous, which is actually limiting the audience that can, how do I explain this? It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy of like, as they're becoming more homogenous, other people who don't fit into that homogenous look are even more alienated and less willing to go, which keeps the community even more homogenous at these bars, to the point where one day these bars might just shut down. There's so many gay bars in New York City that just don't exist anymore that used to exist when I was there in my 20s. And of course, the pandemic had a huge impact on this. I mean, the pandemic had a huge impact on all businesses, right? That are in-person businesses, restaurants and clubs and everything. But I do wonder about this, like, pandemic aside, are we reaching the death of the gay bar as we know it as a meeting spot for a variety and eclectic type of gay men? It's also worth mentioning, right, that gay bars used to be this safe haven for gay men. It was considered, it's a community sort of center. And I feel like maybe this is just me being kind of paranoia based in general, but I feel like the last 5 years or so, you hear about these shootings in public places that target groups of people in certain communities, whether it's Jewish people, Black people, gay people, right? There's been a few gay bar shootings. And I also wonder what impact that has had, that this place that's supposed to be a safe haven isn't necessarily a safe haven anymore. What do you guys think about this?